G'day, I'm Paul. So look, while we'd all love the bells and whistles of the top spec Ford Everest Platinum, it could be a little out of reach for some people. So I thought we'd jump behind the wheel of something a little bit closer to the entry level. This is called the Trend, the Everest Trend. It is one up from the base model. Trend is available in 4x2 and 4x4. This one here is the 4x4 model. That means it's priced at a little over $65,000. But if that's too expensive, the entire range kicks off at just under 53 grand. Now this competes with things like the Mitsubishi Pajero Sport, the Isuzu MU-X, the Toyota Prado. Now, I mentioned in our last video that this competes with the Toyota Prado, and a lot of Toyota fans started pulling their hair out and raging at their keyboards. Tell me why you think or don't think this competes with the Toyota Prado in the comments section below. This is obviously ute-based, the Prado isn't, but people cross-shop these, which is why they are technically competitors. Today we're going to do a detailed review of this car, so if you do want to skip ahead to other parts of the review, you can use the time codes that are on the screen, or if you're on YouTube, you can scroll down and use the chapters below. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel, press the bell icon. That'll tell you every single time we review an SUV. Now let's talk about the design. So you've got 6 external colours to pick from. All but white is going to cost you $700. So you'll see down the front here, the design is a little bit different to the Platinum that we recently reviewed. So you still get that big grille, but that 3D texture looks a little bit different. You have chrome along the front there as well with a big Ford logo. You've got a radar sensor just down the bottom there too with your parking sensors nestled into there. Now when you do go for the 4x4 models, you also get steel underbody protection under there. It's sort of just nestled under there a little bit. You also get these recovery points at the front there, so it is kind of a little bit more capable for off-road driving. There's also these electronic louvers behind the grille here that help either increase or decrease engine heating. You might be wondering, why do you want the engine to heat up? Well, if they are closed like that, you build up heat within the engine bay quicker, and it means the engine reaches operating temperature quicker, which reduces your fuel consumption. So they're kind of levers or louvers they can pull to change how much cooling comes through to the engine. You've got a little camera up the front there with the off-road pack that this car is optioned with. It's got a little high pressure blaster there as well, so if you do any off-road driving, that will clean the lens on the camera. Over here on the headlights, you have full LED headlights with that LED daytime running light. These are not matrix LED headlights, they're just that projector style. Fog lamp down the bottom there as well. Whip around to the side here. So it comes standard with 18-inch alloy wheels, but you can option the all-terrain tyre, and this is what that looks like. It's only a $500 option, and I think it is probably worth getting. We did notice with the Platinum when we went off-road in that on the highway terrains, it really did struggle a little bit on loose gravel. So I'll be keen to see how this goes today, because we'll attack the same course and see if this performs any better in comparison to the Platinum. Up here, bi-turbo, because this is the 4-cylinder version. And of course, I've mentioned this in previous Ranger and Everest reviews as well. This section here is hydroformed, so this is where you get a lot of the cooling, and they overflow some of the engine's other parts into this section. So stuff like your washer fluids sort of tucked into here, so you have more room within the engine bay. Also allows them to fit a second battery to Everest in 4-cylinder and V6 trim as well. I've mentioned this as well in our other reviews. I don't love these side steps. They just look a bit cheap and basic, plasticky and not that great. Body colour on that wing mirror indicator built into their camera on the side as well. This car also has been optioned with the touring pack. It's just under $2,000. That comes with a tow bar with an integrated brake controller, 360 camera, which adds these cameras to the front and sides. And in addition to that, you get zone lighting under there as well. Yeah, privacy glass, roof rails, and then come around to the back with me. So around the back here, Everest written along there, you get these LED taillight sections, Trend, and then if you go for the all-wheel drive version, the 4x4, you get 4-wheel drive written there. This is your tow bar. Under there, you have a full-size spare wheel. Aerial up the top. Now this aerial is a little odd to me. It's got like the shark fin shape, but then it's got this giant sort of aerial that sticks out of there, which is a bit strange. I don't know why they couldn't just stick with the shark fin aerial up the top there. Then you get a brake light built into here. And then that is about it for the rear. So let me know what you reckon about the design of the Everest. Do you think this looks fancy enough? I know with the Platinum it had all these badges and stuff all over it. Do you think this looks good enough being one up from the base model? Let me know what you reckon down in the comments section below. Okay, so we are inside the Everest. Let's start off with the key. Here it is. So you've got unlock, lock, boot, and then on the back of that you have a Ford logo. It's a proximity sensing key, so you can leave that in your pocket, and you have a push button start down here. So, what do we think about the interior design? So if you've seen our other Ranger and Everest reviews, this is going to feel a little bit familiar, but if you haven't, look, I think Ford's done a really good job compared to the old Everest in terms of just making this look a whole lot more modern. It looks a whole lot more modern than a lot of the other competitors in the segment as well, which I think is great news. And that means in terms of materials, it's just soft touch stuff along the dashboard here, and I guess a bit of a well thought out tech design. So big screen in the center there, screen ahead of the driver as well, and then some manual controls down the bottom too, just as a bit of reassurance if you don't like pressing some of those controls. I would like to see other interior color options, because when you look at this, you know, it does look nice with the wood grain and this sort of highlight down the bottom there, but I'd love to see just a little bit more color in here to break up all of the dark. It really is just a little bit dreary when you look at it in this light. So it would be cool to see different seat color options and maybe just a bit of variety inside the cabin. In terms of our touch points though, that is nice and soft in the center there, soft on the door as well. How soft is it? Well, we've got our durometer. We've tested the main surfaces in this cabin. If you want to see how this car compares to others that we've tested before, have a look at the link in the description below. Now, build quality. A little bit loose in the center there and around that dash cluster, but that all feels okay. Door sound. Sounds very nice and solid. Now, infotainment, kind of the centerpiece to this cabin. So this particular spec, once you step up from the entry level, gets a 12-inch screen. Entry level is a 10-inch display, and it uses Ford's Sync 4 infotainment system. That means eventually it's going to get over-the-air updates, which I think is a very handy feature. You also have the Ford Pass Connect app, which also a very handy feature because it gives you a whole bunch of connectivity with the car, including features like checking trailer lights and all that sort of stuff. And oh, by the way, this is the integrated brake controller too down here, so that's what that looks like. In terms of other features, you have AM, FM, DAB, digital radio, and then in addition to that, that's plumbed through an 8-speaker sound system. Not quite as impressive as the 12-speaker B&O Play sound system in the Platinum, but I think it still does a nice enough job. And on the smartphone mirroring front, you have both Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. They're both wireless. I'll show you what Apple CarPlay looks like first. So pretty impressive display there. You can also then change the size of that display too, depending on what you want to do. By the way, I've got to say a big shout out to one of our commenters. I did mention that a little bit tricky clicking on some of these buttons down here sometimes, and he actually, or she actually said, all you do is swipe up, which I think is a very handy thing to know, because I've just spent a lot of time faffing around with that, so it's good to know that actually works. And this is what Android Auto looks like. In terms of your other features, you have inbuilt satellite navigation. That works pretty well. Big display there, easy to use. It also has voice recognition that you can then plumb through your phone as well. Now, in addition to this screen, you also have a screen ahead of the driver. I'm not disappointed by it because you can in the Platinum get the bigger screen, but here in the Trend version, you're getting a smaller display and it just looks a little bit, I don't know, not as impressive in my opinion. This car also has the touring pack that I mentioned earlier, and that also comes with some off-road settings that I'll run you through when we do go for a drive a little bit later on. Now, what about your safety tech? So you have autonomous emergency braking that detects pedestrians and cyclists. You have an auto-dimming rear vision mirror. In addition to that, you have radar cruise control. You have a lane keeping assistant with a lane centering assistant as well. We actually tested this with the Everest Platinum, and it was able to work in all 3 lanes of our banked bowl, which is pretty impressive. We've only had 2 other cars actually able to achieve that. So in terms of this safety assist technology and the lane keeping assistant, this stuff is really excellent. Blind spot monitoring built into that wing mirror covers the length of the trailer as well, thanks to that integrated trailer brake controller. In addition to all of that, you have both front and rear parking sensors and a 360 camera. I'll show you what that looks like. So there it is there, view out the front. That is really nice and high resolution. 360 view down here. Not the best view in the world, in my opinion, but you can then change the views depending on what you want there. And you can then flick between those as required. And then it gives you the track that the car's going on. If you move the steering wheel, you can see that moving. You can also change what the view looks like. So that's looking out the back at our suitcase. You can see the sonar there as well. And then you can also flick between the different views as you go, including this view, which is hitching a trailer, which I think is pretty impressive. Moving on to practicality, and we will start off with your connectivity. So down here, you've got a USB-C port, a USB-A port. You have another USB-A port up the top here for a dash cam. You have wireless phone charging. You've got a little chip holder down the front here. In terms of your other connectivity, inside here, you have a 12-volt outlet as well. Where you're going to store your phone, so it can live down there on that wireless charger, or you can just whack it there in the chip holder if you want, or the cup holder, whatever suits. Coffee cup, so it can live here in the cup holder nicely without getting de-lidded. You then have teeth within that cup holder to hold it in place. But in addition to that, just in front of your vents over here on the driver and front passenger side, you also have a slot there to hold your drink as required. And what about your bottles? So small bottle fits in there without any dramas. That fits inside the door too. So it is our big bottle, which is cool. So it doesn't fit here, but it does fit inside the door. Other storage, you have this center console here, which is nice and deep. Also has a coin tray. You have a glove box down the bottom here, which is reasonably sized. You have a glove box up the top as well. And then finally, you have a sunglasses holder. Now, what about your comfort? So it comes standard with dual zone automatic climate control, but this has an optional package that adds in electric seat adjustment, also adds in heated seats and ventilated seats as well. So you can activate that stuff just by pushing up here, sliding up and down. It's all sort of pretty straightforward. In addition to that, you have electric seat adjustment for the driver and front passenger, and memory for the driver as well. In terms of the seat adjustment, you can go forwards, backwards. The backrest can go forwards, backwards. You can lift the front of the seat, the back of the seat, and you also have lumbar adjustment. The seats are actually quite comfortable. I found in both the Ranger and this that they have plenty of support, and for a longer distance drive, it is just a nice and comfy place to be seated. Steering adjustment comes in the form of tilt and reach. Then on the reach test, all of this stuff is easy to reach while you're driving. So we're in the second row of the Everest. In terms of knee room, it's not amazing. Toe room's fine. Headroom isn't too bad. I don't know, it's strange. I remember the Everest Platinum, the legroom being a little bit better, but perhaps I have my seat a little further back here or something like that. But yeah, I was hoping for maybe a little bit more legroom here, given this is the SUV version of the dual cab ute. Should have enough room for adults and kids. Other creature comforts, you have map pockets in the back of the seats. You have USB-C, USB-A, individual blower controls here. All of your air vents are located here in the roof. So they're sort of adjustable to where you want to be. You also have air vents for the third row as well. Center armrest, you have two cup holders built into there. So bottle fits in there without any dramas. And then bottle also fits inside the door without any dramas at all. The second row can be slid forwards and backwards. You can also recline it slightly as well. That also means you can kick back and relax if you want to, or give your third row passengers a little bit of extra room. You have ISOFIX points on the two outboard seats. You have top tether points in every single seat in the second and third row, which I think is pretty cool. Now, our window test, it's auto down and up. Goes all the way down as well. Very impressive. So let's talk cargo space. We'll open this up. Alrighty, now, third row. Let me just quickly run you through the amount of space here. I'm not going to climb in simply because we did this in the Everest Platinum. And look, there is actually surprisingly enough room for an adult in there. Probably not for long distance journeys, but you can fit adults in there, I guess, if you need to. It is more a kid-friendly space. And here in the Trend, you don't actually get the electrically adjustable third row. It is all manually adjustable. Before I show you how that works, you have just under 300 litres of cargo space here. Beneath this section, you have a little bit of storage. So you've got your own little hooks here to hold everything up. This is also where you access the drop down for the spare tyre. And then you have a couple of tools in here for accessories, for changing tyre and all that sort of stuff. To drop your third row, you basically pull this lever down, that folds down out of the way. Once that is gone, you have just under 900 litres of cargo space. You have a 12-volt outlet just off to the side here as well. If you do want to expand the space even further, I'll show you that in a second, but it's what it looks like with our bags in there. Our bags also fit when the third row is up as well, so it actually is quite a versatile storage space. There's also this little lip here too to stop things flying out if you do open the boot on an incline, but if you do want to have almost 2,000 litres of cargo space, you drop the second row from here. Once you do drop it down, you have almost a flat load floor. It's on a slight incline, but it's flat enough to load big old items in as well. So yeah, not a bad storage space. So we have just hit the road in the 4-cylinder Everest. Last time I was here in an Everest, it was the V6. So it's interesting to be able to sort of feel what this is like back to back. Big difference between the V6 and this obviously is the engine, but it's also the noise. This sounds like a noisier engine in comparison to the V6. So this is running the 2-litre bi-turbo 4-cylinder diesel, makes 154 kilowatts of power and 500 newton meters of torque, and that's all mated to a 10-speed automatic transmission. Just like the V6 as well, and unlike the previous generation of Everest, you can actually run this in 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive automatic, 4-wheel drive high range, 4-wheel drive low range as well. And I'll run you through some of the 4-wheel drive modes when we do a bit of light off-roading, but for the moment, I will stick with these. So in 2-wheel drive high range, you're sending all the torque to the rear axle. So that's going to save a little bit of fuel, but ultimately it doesn't give you the same, I guess, handling characteristics on low friction surfaces. And when we shot our XLT V6 video, I kind of demonstrated the difference between 2-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive automatic on a wet corner. You can really see there is a big difference there in terms of how the car is composed and handles itself. So I think for the most part, if you want to save fuel, you just run it in 2 high. But if you're sort of driving up a gravel mountain pass or even on a mountain pass when it is snowing or wet, it is worth just popping it into 4-wheel drive automatic, and that shift happens seamlessly, and it just just happens in the background. Now let's talk fuel economy. So Ford claims a combined average of 7.2 litres per 100 Ks. We are currently sitting on 9 litres per 100 Ks. Look, it is significantly better than the V6. The V6 I thought was a little thirstier than it should have been, whereas this is closer to the money there in terms of fuel economy. Now, what does all that feel like behind the wheel? Let's give it a little punch here. Yeah, look, 500 V, 600 newton meters, you do definitely feel the difference, but it's actually not as different as I thought it was going to be, especially taking off from a standing start. If I slow down here, bring it down a little bit and then just punch the throttle, this sort of does still push you in the back, and it is slightly more responsive than the V6 as well. The V6 is a little bit laggy until it's up and moving. So yeah, this really isn't as bad as I thought it would be in comparison to the V6. Oh, it's also worth pointing out on fuel economy there as well that this uses an 80-litre fuel tank. Now, what's the ride like? So this is running on 18s compared to 21 in the Platinum we recently drove, and this feels all the more better for it. It is really nice and smooth in and around town. It is very soft, and yeah, it doesn't have that sharpness that the Platinum does. This really is a much more smoother and refined ride. So what happens if you dial the pace up? Let's get it up to 130 for our sine waves here. See how it performs over this. The Everest Platinum didn't have a huge amount of body control over the sine waves. We'll see if this is any better. Yeah, look, this kind of feels the same. Yeah, that top end really is quite sloppy. You're going to hit these things in the country when you're overtaking, especially on some of the washed away roads we have out there at the moment. Now, there is no sport mode. You do have a number of drive modes that I'll run you through when we go off-road, but there is no sport mode. So I've got it in 4A. We'll go for a little punch around our track here and see what it feels like. The brakes feel nice and strong. There's a fair bit of body roll there. Look, the other problem as well is we're on the all-terrains here, so they don't have quite as much traction as the more road-oriented highway terrain tyres did in the Everest Platinum we drove recently, but it is still holding on okay. It is actually quite surprising how much pace you can carry in the Everest, despite it being such a big car weighing in at around 2.5 tons. It's actually fairly sporty when you sort of tip it in, and I'm really not noticing that much of a difference here between the 4-cylinder and the V6 in terms of the way it's performing. I think on the back straight we'll probably notice a little bit of a difference, but mid-range torque delivery in the 4-cylinder is still really impressive. I think you will notice most of the difference when it comes to towing, but if you're not towing, you might not even need the V6. So I've got it flat to the board here on the back straight. actually still picking up speed okay in comparison to the V6, so it's actually not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Okay, let's talk 0 to 100. So this is the second time I get to do this. Someone forgot to bring our V-Box, so you're just going to have to watch this on the screen there. Keep in mind that this is obviously, the speedo is out by a few Ks now, so the number that you end up seeing for 0 to 100 won't quite match what we got for the Platinum, which was against the V-Box, but we'll give it a shot anyway. There you go, not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Now our all-important reverse test. See how the 4-cylinder matches up against the V6. Here we go. It's not too bad. Tap out there at 41 Ks an hour. Now let's talk road noise. So look, you do get a fair bit of road noise coming into the cabin thanks to those all-terrain tyres. It's not terrible, but it does feel to me like it is louder in here than it was in the Platinum that we tested recently. So it's not the end of the world, but you do notice the tyre noise. On the visibility front, I can see clearly down the front of the car there. The wing mirrors are enormous with blind spot monitors built in that also cover the trailer as well. And then looking out the back window, I have really decent visibility there too. Now in terms of your towing capacity, 3.5 tonnes with a brake trailer, and turning circle comes in at just under 12 metres. Now, just very quickly on the lane centering system, if you want to see how the Everest performs, we shot that in the Platinum. It passed in all 3 lanes. You can have a look at that video by clicking up here. Okay, time to do some light off-roading. So we were here the other day in the Everest Platinum, and it was a little bit disappointing with its highway terrain tyres. So we're going to do all the tests again, this time with the all-terrains, and that means kicking off in 2-wheel drive high range for our offset mogul. Now, before we actually do set off, I'll run you through the 4-wheel drive specs. So ground clearance of 226 millimeters. You have 2-wheel drive high range, 4-wheel drive automatic, 4-wheel drive high range, which locks this into 4-wheel drive mode, 50% of torque to the front, 50% to the rear, 4-wheel drive low range, and then you have a rear diff lock. This one also has the touring package, which means you get the 360 camera, and then when you push this, you get this beautiful view plus your off-road display there, plus ahead of the driver there as well. So let's load up here in 2-wheel drive high range. See how well the traction control works here, especially with the chunkier tyres. It should actually do well. Okay, there we go. We've got the rear right off the ground. I'll roll into the throttle there. There we go. So 2-wheel drive, high range, no dramas there, very impressive. We will turn around again and hit that in 4-wheel drive, high range, just to see what it's like when we actually get 2 wheels off the ground. Okay, so we will put it straight into 4-wheel drive, high range, and I will also leave the rear diff lock off just for the moment so we can have a look at how this goes. Here we go, here we climb on this side. And then we get to about here somewhere. This is going to force traction control to do its thing, and also the 4-wheel drive system. There we go. Okay, so we are getting to the point where we have 2 wheels off the ground just there. So I'm going to lean onto the throttle here, and we'll just see how it likes that. Yeah, no dramas at all. That is good. Didn't even need to lock the rear diff there. So yeah, really impressive there. The traction control system works really well in this, and it just doesn't fight the car. It just does exactly what you expect it to do. So let's head to our hill. The hill is where the Everest struggled last time. I'm hoping this time around it doesn't have any dramas. Okay, it is time for our hill. So what I'm going to do is flick this into low range. So pop that into neutral, hit 4-wheel drive low range. I'm going to lock the rear diff as well. So it says 4x4 shift in progress. That back into drive, we'll lock the rear diff. I'll also put this into the ruts setting. So in terms of the drive modes, we have normal, eco, what else have we got here? Towing, hello, telling us about seat belts. Normal, eco, towing, mud, ruts, slippery, and sand. So I reckon we'll go into mud and ruts. We're in low range, rear diff is locked. Okay, here we go. So first up, I'll drive up just normally, and then next time around I'll come to a stop and then accelerate up again. So This is also struggling a little bit here. I'm going to stay in that throttle. Okay, so it's getting a little bit more traction up there than it did in the last Everest, but yeah, it still sort of isn't progressing as easily as something like a Ranger does. So let's go back around and we'll give that one more shot. Except this time I will stop up there. And before we do that, we will do our hill descent. So hill descent control, you press that button just there, and then just roll out of the throttle and down we go. All right, that is nice and steady. Very impressed with that. Then you can adjust the speed here using the cruise control switch as well. So let's get back up to our hill. I'll give this one more crack. Okay, take two. This time I'm going to stop and accelerate again. I am chewing up this hill, something shocking. So, all right, let me stop just here and I'll roll onto the throttle. We'll see how much better it is here with the all-terrains. Oh, it is not liking this. All right, let's go, let's go, let's go. All right, we made it, we made it. Okay, so I just had to stay in that. Yeah, I am chewing up the hill a little bit there. Look, this does perform better on the all-terrains. It definitely got a little bit more traction, but yeah, I'm just surprised the Everest doesn't get up there anywhere near as cleanly or neatly as the Ranger did. So yeah, just an interesting point, I reckon. Now, before we give our water crossing a crack, let's have a look at the rocks. We'll see if this feels any different to the Everest with the highway terrains. So I mentioned this in other videos. I'll leave this in low range and I'll just ride the brake with the throttle a little bit just to have a bit more control over it. Yeah, this is really nice and smooth. I think the all-terrains just give you a tiny bit more sort of leverage there when it comes to these rocks. It's not, you know, a low-profile tyre like it is on the 21-inch. I can hear a couple of little scratches underneath there. We do have that steel underbody protection at the front. You know, it's not a huge amount, so you can get ARB accessories for this as well, which means if you are serious about off-roading, I'd probably go to town on some underbody protection at the front there. Maybe even a cheeky little lift or something. But yeah, pretty impressive here, just in stock form with the all-terrains over these rocks. So final test is going to be our wading test. So this has a wading depth of 800 millimeters, and it has been very wet in Melbourne recently, and our water crossing is at about 700, a little over 700 at the moment, so this will be interesting. I've kept this in low range with the rear diff lock just to be on the safe side, and we will see how we go. All right, here we go. Oh, that feels nice and deep. It feels like it's kind of floating through here. Yeah, nice, that was impressive. Those parking sensors are very annoying. It would be nice if there was just a little switch there to kill those, but yeah, look, that was great. So had a little bit more headroom there, but yeah, keep in mind if you are going to do any driving like that, I can hear the water lapping through the doors. If you are going to do any driving like that, you probably are going to want a snorkel just to be 100% sure. But yeah, look, straight out of the box here, the Everest is pretty impressive off-road. I didn't love how it performed up our hill there. It's not the world's steepest hill, but yeah, for some reason, it just wasn't loving that, both with the highway terrains and these all-terrains as well. So yeah, which is interesting because the Ranger was perfectly fine. So yeah, just a little interesting tidbit. So Ford Everest trend, what do we think? I actually thought there was going to be a much bigger difference between the V6 we tested recently and the 4-cylinder, but the 4-cylinder is kind of pretty much about as good as the V6. Yeah, you do get a bit more of a difference with the V6, especially when towing, but I think for the most part, the 4-cylinder is going to do the job. And you save a stack of money here, especially when you tick touring pack and the seats. You kind of make up for most of the stuff you're getting in the Platinum anyway. So yeah, pretty impressed with that. And I reckon this could be the pick of the bunch. I'm looking forward to driving the Sport to see how that feels, but I think if you don't want to splash out on the Platinum or the Sport, this is probably where your money needs to go, especially in 4-cylinder trim as well. So let me know in the comments section below, have you bought a Ford Everest? How is it? Are you enjoying it? Is there anything you wish they could have changed about it before you bought it? Let me know down there. If you did enjoy this video, please make sure you like it and you share it with your mates. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon. But until next time, take it easy.